In this episode, I'm talking to Dr. Mariza Snyder, who's going to be giving you her top nutrition and lifestyle tips to balance your hormones for women specifically, and how to use essential oils, and her top nutrition and lifestyle tips and morning routines and evening routines to live life full of energy. So enjoy this episode, and I will see you on the inside. Hey everyone, this is Ari Witten, and welcome back to the Energy Blueprint podcast. Today I have a very special guest who has recently become a friend of mine, Dr. Mariza Snyder. And I want to read you a little bit about her bio before we get into this. So Dr. Mariza Snyder is a functional practitioner and the author of 6 books, the best-selling Smart Mom's Guide to Essential Oils, the DASH Diet Cookbook, as well as the Low Glycemic Index Slow Cooker, the Antioxidant Counter, the Water Infusion Detox Book, and the Matcha Miracle. I'm a big fan of matcha, as we talked about recently, by the way. Dr. Mariza is currently working on her newest book, the Essential Oils Hormone Solution. For the past 10 years, she's lectured at wellness centers, conferences, and corporations on hormone health, essential oils, nutrition, and detoxification. She's also the host of the Essentially You podcast, designed to empower women to become the CEO of their health. You can check out her website at drmariza.com, and that's M-A-R-I-Z-A. So it's spelled like Mariza, but the proper pronunciation is Mariza. And it's all about women's hormonal health and menopause tips, including essential oil recipes and remedies. So with all of that said, welcome, Dr. Mariza.
Thank you so much for having me, Ari. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. And, we've had the pleasure of connecting in person a couple times now. We had lunch a few weeks ago, and then we hung out at a seminar recently. And I have to say, just on a personal note, she's just an absolute pleasure of a human being, extremely knowledgeable. And I love the work she's doing when it comes to female hormonal health, which is the subject of today's podcast, as luck would have it. So with that said, I would love to get started, Dr. Mariza, by just having you talk a bit about your background and how you became so passionate about women's health.
Absolutely. So I became really passionate about women's health because I was having my own health challenges. And growing up, I remember my grandma and my mom struggling, but I didn't know what was going on necessarily. I felt back then we didn't really have conversations around women's hormones or, what could be happening in terms of imbalance. But my grandma really suffered from hormonal issues, and my mom, growing up with her, mood swings, unexplained weight gain, horrible PMS. And it was just, I just thought my mom wasn't well, really, is what we thought. And so as I was growing up, had some of my own kind of hormone issues, even as a teenager into my 20s. But again, it just wasn't something we talked about. And it just seemed like for women, it was just a normal thing. But then as I got into my late 20s, early 30s, and I've always been kind of a quick pace, fast, I wouldn't say a type A girl, but just like to keep busy. That kind of hit to a screeching halt. And so I had just started my practice. I was seeing patients and seeing women with chronic pain or chronic fatigue, but also a lot of hormone issues. And around the same time that I was starting to really take care of these women, I was having some of my own hormone, I called hormone chaos. I had put on 35 pounds and I couldn't get rid of it. I was having horrible PMS, insomnia, mood swings, and I was literally chronically fatigued. And I found myself one morning waking up and just really having this inability to lift my head up off the pillow. And I knew that I was in trouble. And I remember looking at myself in the mirror as I kind of crawled to the bathroom that day, and I just didn't even recognize this person. And there was a lot of shame and embarrassment because here I am going to go show up, run tests, figure out what's going on with these women when I haven't even figured out a way to take care of myself. And that was when I knew something needed to shift now. And that was kind of the start of that journey.
Wow. Intense. And this has become, obviously you are one of many here, right? This has become an epidemic, that there are hormonal issues and different kinds of hormonal imbalances that are occurring in women on an epidemic level. First of all, would you say that's accurate?
Absolutely, that's accurate.
Okay.
And very much so. And I think women don't know what's happening. And a lot of times I feel like these hormone shifts are happening kind of in the background, starting out as whispers in a way. We just really don't notice it. And we just think it's, when you're talking to other women too about it, it's just like we're all living in this normal. And then when we head to the doctor's office, either, we're misdiagnosed or not diagnosed at all, and we're prescribed something entirely different, right? We're showing up for anxiousness or depression, or maybe we're showing up for, needing a sleep pill. And that's really not getting to the core root of the issue. It's just a symptom of what's happening with us.
Mm. So why do you think this issue is becoming an epidemic, or has become an epidemic? Like, give me kind of like the broad landscape. And let me phrase this a different way. Like, why, humans are designed over the course, our biology is a product of hundreds of thousands of years of evolution. Why do we even have to think about our hormones at all, or do any strategies that are designed to balance out our hormones? Why hasn't, sort of nature just taken care of this, and our hormones just work the way they should, and we don't have to think about it?
Well, I think a big reason for that, I had a different answer, and then I'm glad for the clarification, because I was going to go on this whole tangent around belief and how women don't believe that they deserve to take care of themselves, which is true.
Well, we should talk about that later too.
Yes. But what I think is really happening is we're talking about all of those, tens of thousands of years of genetics. I would say that our chemistry, our biochemistry, our brain chemistry hasn't caught up with how quick paced our modern world is. In a lot of ways, when we talk about the stress response, and this is what you know more than anybody, so I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. But, when we used to, when there was I call it stranger danger, right? When there was a threat in the area, and especially for women, it could be, it could be back in the day, it was animals, or maybe it was a man or something that was threatening us, or we would have an opportunity to respond through our autonomic nervous system, right? We had an automatic response through the hepatothalamic pituitary axis. I've said that word, I don't even know how many times today, but today, I can't say it any longer, supposedly. But so the HPA axis, and I think what's going on is that our modern world is just triggering us a lot easier. And our chemistry, especially our brain chemistry, that HPA axis in our hormone system, is having to respond so fast, and we weren't necessarily meant to do that. Like, I think about a gazelle, and you think about being in Africa, you think about this gazelle, and gazelles are just doing their thing, grazing in nature. All of a sudden there's a tiger, and gazelles start to run full speed ahead because that system kicks in. And then once the threat is gone, they just go back to doing them. They go back to grazing. Well, but today for us, imagine that gazelle, that we are constantly getting that signal over and over and over again on the text message, driving somewhere, stuck in traffic, late for a meeting, getting something turned in on time, late for our kids, whatever that may be. We're constantly triggering this sympathetic nervous system response that's leading to this cascade of hormone triggers that is over time deregulating the system. And that's why I think we're finding ourselves in a bit of a hormone mess.
Yeah. So let's get specific now. So what specific kinds of hormonal imbalances are we talking about? And we can make this very specific to women. Obviously, chronic stress also applies to men, but let's talk just about women here. What specifically is going on hormonally in the people that you're working with?
Absolutely. So what I find with women, I picture an average woman that I work with. Usually her cortisol levels are deregulated. Oftentimes what I see is they're high at night. So she's, working late into the night, maybe at a computer, or doing the second or third job of her day in the evening, and then waking up to lower cortisol levels. And that's usually due to a lifestyle of stress. That can then have a effect on, when I look at progesterone and estrogen levels, what I'll normally see is if cortisol is requiring that master hormone to make more cortisol, we call that pregnenolone, that mother hormone for all of our sex hormones for women. We're kind of stealing that from progesterone. I see a lot of women with deregulated cortisol levels. They also have lower amounts of estrogen. And sometimes with the women that I work with, which is oftentimes in kind of that perimenopause and menopause state, they can have, it's interesting, they could even have lower lower estrogen levels or even high, depending on the situation. But in relation to progesterone, that estrogen is higher, so they're showing up for estrogen dominance. And that can also have an effect on our insulin levels, that can have an effect on our thyroid, that we're not firing off, our T3 and T4 correctly. We're not transferring that properly. And we start to see women struggling with the inability to go to sleep at night at a good time because, they're wired and tired. We see women not able to lose weight properly, or maybe they're feeling very sluggish. And ultimately, oftentimes what I find is women are just feeling just completely exhausted throughout the day as well. And not that there aren't other symptoms, but that's often, I can't tell you how many levels of hormone tests I've looked at over the years. And it breaks my heart to see this very similar pattern show up. And I've had that exact those hormone results myself.
Yeah. So just to clarify one point, so you can have estrogen dominance while also having low estrogen levels. It's because it's relative to the progesterone, correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. So you sometimes see women with very high estrogen and low progesterone, or you sometimes see low estrogen and even lower progesterone.
That's right.
Okay. So let's talk about weight gain and weight loss specifically. So how do some of these hormone imbalances that you just mentioned, how do they relate to people struggling to lose weight or kind of gaining weight without really apparently changing any of their lifestyle habits, and they're all of a sudden putting on weight?
Absolutely. So, let's give an example of and cortisol, I find, is kind of the orchestrator of a lot of this, and at least in what I had seen. And so cortisol can deregulate our insulin levels. So it could create what I call like insulin deregulation, where we're not metabolizing, we're not getting blood glucose into the cells, into the liver as efficiently as we could. And that lends to weight issues. Also, I start to see that the thyroid is beginning to overcompensate. And in that particular instance, you'll have more symptoms of hypothyroidism, where women are just, they're exhausted, their metabolism isn't firing the way that it normally should because those receptor sites aren't being filled. And then the other way is we are seeing high estrogen levels. We know high estrogen levels tends to start putting weight on our hips, on our booty, on the places we don't necessarily want it, unless you're trying to look like Kim Kardashian. And with the cortisol too, we're talking about visceral belly fat, because that particular hormone is our survival hormone. And even if you've eaten, even if you're eating well, your body is in this state of scarcity, and it really does feel like it needs to stock up for that emergency moment that you're having. So and the thing of it is that each and every one of these hormones can be at play at the same time, but I feel like kind of that master orchestrator, at least in my opinion and what I've seen, is oftentimes the chronic stress. And yes, can you have hypothyroidism or thyroid issues without having chronic stress? Absolutely. But just in the kind of hormone balances that I see with my patients, cortisol is usually playing a bit of a role too.
So one of the things you mentioned when it comes to cortisol is this pattern of lower morning cortisol when we should have a big peak in morning cortisol levels, and higher evening cortisol levels. It's often called a flattened diurnal curve, because we're supposed to have this big sort of peak at the beginning of the day and it's supposed to decrease. And a lot of people have a blunted peak, and then kind of it doesn't really go down as much as it should. It kind of stays elevated throughout the day. So what are the biggest factors in causing that? And can you talk about maybe some of the ways that you approach correcting that flattened diurnal curve of cortisol?
Absolutely. So as I had mentioned before, a lot of what I see is that a couple things that I have seen is that women in particular are just kind of running into their evening. Like they're not setting up a time for restful sleep. They don't have a sleep ritual in play. They're pretty much what I call kind of a Tasmanian deviling into bed. And what I've learned through my own mistakes is that you can't just run into bed and go to sleep. Your brain is running. And so I think also being at the computers, that blue light is definitely not helping us as well. Not being out in nature, not connecting into our bodies is all playing a major role there, that we're just kind of in this artificial environment, working until we fall asleep at night. And that's really stressing the system there. So I think a lot of it has to do with the way that we're treating our bodies throughout the day as we're kind of heading into the evening that then is just throwing us off in the morning. So instead of having that peak of cortisol in the morning to kind of get us up, we're kind of slogging through that morning, slogging through our day, drinking caffeine or you're hitting caffeine and sugar at the same time to kind of get things going, which again can play a major role on our cortisol levels as well, kind of leading into that catch-22. But then just kind of like I said, just working our way through that evening and deregulating cortisol levels.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I'll add here, I'm actually literally all day for the last several weeks, I've been working on this really comprehensive review around causes of diurnal, a flattened diurnal curve in cortisol levels. And actually being a night owl, I don't know if you've looked at this at all, but there's about 5 or 6 studies looking at night owl chronotypes versus morning chronotypes, whether you're a morning person or night owl. And just being a night owl, even if you're perfectly healthy and you don't even have any symptoms, can cause profound differences in the morning peak of cortisol levels and the evening levels of cortisol. You can create that pattern of a flattened diurnal curve just by going to sleep later at night. And just that factor alone is enough to produce pretty big shifts in the cortisol rhythm, which is kind of amazing. So I think that what you're saying about kind of people running into the night and not really knowing how to shut down and start to turn things off and kind of just go, they're still in go mode, like for hours and hours and hours, probably later than they should be.
Their brain thinks it's like 2 p.m. I feel, running at that 2 p.m. speed when it's 11 or midnight at night.
Yeah. So just that alone, I mean, not even looking at any other factor, just that can create pretty big shifts in terms of cortisol dysregulation.
Yeah, and I can't tell you, I was on the phone with 3 different people today, just women, supporting women and entrepreneurs as well. And I think each and every one of them was up till 1, midnight, 2 in the morning yesterday. I did interviews with them today, and I was like, this is why we're in trouble.
Yeah.
They were every single day I come across, my husband's a night owl, and I've really had to force myself to go to bed before him, to not get into that habit, because it definitely doesn't serve me.
Mm-hmm.
But I talk to so many women, they're like, it's my only time. It's my time to get these things done. Like they've built it in as that third work shift. Like that is my precious work moment. And I'm like, yeah, and it is killing you.
Yeah. No, I honestly think it would be better for those women to go to sleep early, like maybe with their family, with their kids much earlier in the evening, and maybe wake up super early and kind of have their time to do their own thing at that time. Just based on the research that I've seen, I think that might be a better strategy for their long-term health.
I agree. I think what it is that people, you can kind of push it. It's like, I have this quote recently that I've been sharing that says, you need that extra hour of sleep more than you need that next Netflix episode, right? It's so much easier to kind of just push the envelope to stay up a little bit later, but nobody wants to get up super early,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a function of the modern environment, with our houses filled up with artificial lighting and TVs and iPhones and computers and all these things that are producing all this light that have subtly shifted like everybody's bedtime as an entire population. We've shifted our bedtime later and later and later over the last few decades. And it's just being programmed in by the environment. And a lot of people now are convincing themselves, oh, this is just my normal bedtime. This is when my body has always gone to sleep. Well, yes, but only because of the environment you live in, not because you're genetically designed to go to bed at that time.
Absolutely. I mean, go camping, right? Go camping. When the sun's down, there's not a lot more you can do.
Yeah. So, well, let's get back to weight loss. Mm-hmm. What in terms of these hormonal imbalances that are contributing to kind of being stuck in terms of weight loss or gaining weight without wanting to, what are some of the things that people can do to start fixing that?
Absolutely. Well, I think again, getting to that core root of the issue, you've got this orchestrator, this one hormone that, is really beautifully designed to protect us in a lot of ways, that is kind of running the show. And so really, I think it's about starting to create those habits, starting to getting up early, making sure that you're going to bed at night, creating a morning and evening ritual, to make sure that you're kind of resetting those cortisol levels, becoming more self-aware of when you're feeling stressed, and being okay with asking yourself questions, things like, is this going to serve me right now? Or how is my body going to feel if I do this? Or, what is it going to feel like in the morning if I don't head to sleep? Just getting really big clarity. I always say that the unexpected solution to radical self-healing is self-awareness. And if indeed it's lifestyle that is kind of causing this deregulation, this flattening of our cortisol curve, then we've got to be able to be mindful about switching that. I think a lot of this is lifestyle, especially when it comes to those stress levels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when it comes to stress,
mm-hmm.
and when it comes to, actually, before we get there,
mm-hmm.
let's talk about the morning and evening ritual.
Sure.
And dig into some specifics. So I would love to find out about what your night ritual and your morning ritual looks like.
Absolutely. So I want you to know that my rituals are punctuated with essential oils. I feel like they really do just bring into those rituals. A lot of the reason why I feel we struggle with them is that, these are habits. At the end of the day, rituals is just a kind of a sexier word, right? It sounds a little bit more fun than a habit. And, what I love about oils, it just makes some of these things a little bit easier. But I do get up early in the morning. I think that is important. I try to be more of an early morning person than a night owl. And I start my morning every day with a warm glass of lemon water, because I want to just support my digestive system, kind of wake things up and hydrate my body, because goodness knows at night we lose a lot of water. So we kind of wake up dehydrated. Then I get my oils out, and my favorite, I love wild orange, peppermint, monoterpenes, and that methanol. They just open up the lungs, kind of awaken the senses, and it just gives me that little extra boost to something. Then I go out in nature. I try to go out and put my feet on the grass. I'm outside for a good 10 to 15 minutes at least. Outside, we have a table out on the deck looking over the ocean. So I grab my gratitude journal. I've got my little gratitude blend, or maybe just a citrus oil like tangerine or wild orange. And wild orange is known as the oil of abundance. And so I'm always breathing that in, because who doesn't want a little bit more abundance in their life? And I start writing in my journal, because I always say it's really difficult to have a crappy day when you have just thought about all the ways that life has blessed you. So I have my journal. I map out my big rocks for the day, although I oftentimes do that the night before as well, because I think kind of knowing your schedule, prioritizing yourself before you prioritize anybody else's needs is really going to help you get centered and set the tone for the day. And then I am a big green smoothie advocate. I'm a green smoothie girl. And so I make the green smoothie.
I think that moniker is already taken, just so you know.
Yes, it is.
Robin Openshaw may object to you calling yourself a green smoothie girl. As long as you specify you're a green smoothie girl.
I am a green smoothie girl, not the green smoothie girls. I thought I had said a green smoothie girl. So yeah, I follow the legion of the green smoothie girl. It's because of her that I've been drinking smoothies for 10 plus years now. My goodness, we've known each other a long time, and we put plant-based protein in there. We put avocado in there, all kinds of yummy greens, and I put matcha green tea in there. I put my berries, and it's just, there's this ritual around making these green smoothies that really feel nourishing, to be in the kitchen, to be doing all of this. And it's very much something I've been doing for a long time. So we have our green smoothies, we take our supplements, and so that's really a big part. And that takes me about, I want to say, about a half hour. And there's other things I do. I adorn myself with oils. I have a little shower ritual where I spritz oils around me, just to kind of continue to just wake up and just enjoy my morning. So that's my morning routine in a nutshell. So motion, just inspiring the mind, elevating with the oils, fueling the body, hydrating the body, and getting out in nature. Those are major things that have to happen for me. And I'll tell you, once you create a morning ritual like this, and it can look different for everybody, you're not going to want to give it up. you're not going to want to give that up. And, try to take my morning away from me. I swear, it's not pretty. So I have to really have that now, because I know that not only am I protecting my hormones and taking care of my body, but I know that I'm going to show up for this interview or for everything else I do that day, like so much better. So that's my morning. Do you want me to go in the evening first as well?
Yeah, you beat me to it. That was beautiful. I love your morning ritual.
Awesome. I had a feeling we were aligned.
Yeah.
So evening ritual, again, all electronics have got to go off. I have a big rule. We got to shut it down. So about an hour to 2 hours before bed, the phone gets put away. I mean, I literally turn it off. Computers go down. Try to avoid all the blue light. And I'm a big reader. I love reading, and I don't read on a tablet. I read a real book, and I've got books everywhere all over the house. And so I love reading. We get the diffuser going. So I have a little nighttime diffuser right here. We put in calming essential oils. So about an hour to 2 hours before bed, oils like clary sage, lavender, bergamot, which is the oil of self-love and acceptance, Roman chamomile, any of those oils that kind of just really tell the brain to shut it down. And so we run those in the house, we run those in our bedroom, and then I'm just reading. I'm just taking time to either connect with my husband, Alex, or reading. And then once we're heading into bed, I really feel like I've kind of got my brain ready. Once I'm heading into bed, I have oils by the bedside. So I have like a little roller like this, and it has, again, some of the same oils like vetiver, cedarwood, lavender. And I roll them on my feet. I roll them on the back of my neck. I roll them on my palms and do a couple of deep belly breaths. Take my book. I'm still reading my book in bed. And then usually it is shut down time, and I'm asleep within about 15 to 20 minutes. So that's usually what my evening ritual looks like.
So you get like 2.5 pages of reading done?
Well, the second time, yes.
Yeah, no, I know how that is sometimes. Sometimes when your nightly ritual is too effective, you don't actually get much reading done.
Not a lot of reading done, but you know what? I'm totally okay with that, because I had done some before as well.
Yeah.
And so, so I usually have like very specific books in bed. So like my in-bed books are fiction books. Those usually will keep me up a tiny bit longer, but so often the book is falling against my chest right before heading to bed.
Yeah, totally. I know the feeling. So stress. You've talked quite a bit about stress. What specific essential oils do you find are most effective for combating stress?
Absolutely. So there's a lot of research on essential oils and reducing cortisol levels, even blood pressure and pulse. So I love oils for reducing stress. And some of the ones that I mentioned for sleep, very similar, can be supportive for stress. And when it comes to using them for stress levels, it's really about the use of aromatherapy. So breathing in those chemical constituents, that's going to be the most profound way to do it, because they have a no holds bar directly into that limbic brain, kind of calming down the amygdala, which is, again, kind of the most important part of the brain for, I call, stranger danger, right? Just assessing what is happening. And when it's overactivating, you can find yourself very triggered very easily. So my go-to oils for stress, if I had to pick a top 5, is lavender, because lavender is all things calming, cedarwood, clary sage, bergamot, and Roman chamomile. So all those 5 oils have been thoroughly researched to reduce cortisol levels in the body. And it's as simple as having them on your person. So I always have my oils on me at all times. I have a little oil bag that goes into my purse that I have on me. But even when I have a little purse, I usually have a stress oil or kind of a relaxing oil on me, because you never know when you're going to get that text message, or you never know when you're finding yourself kind of in a situation where you feel a little bit overwhelmed. At least for me as a woman, it feels that way sometimes. Mm-hmm. And so what I do is I just take that oil blend. Usually I like it in a roller. So I'll give you an example. 20 drops of lavender, 20 drops of bergamot, top it off with grapeseed oil or almond oil, whatever you prefer, mix it up. And then I'm going to roll it on my palms like this. And I have a technique called the pause and stress reset technique. And what you do is you have all those chemical constituents on your palms. You take a deep breath and all that air, just suck it all the way in, and you will hold it for 5 seconds. So I'm going to do that for you. And hold for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold it and then breathe it all the way out through your mouth. and you're going to hold it there for another 5 seconds. And then I repeat this this pause meditation for 5 breaths. And what's happening is you are literally switching from that sympathetic mode over to more of a relaxed parasympathetic mode. And if you do this technique enough with your oils, because that's that extra boost, you're getting those chemical constituents at play, you can begin to actually change the way that you manage or you respond to stress. And that has been one of the most profound ways that I've been able to kind of mitigate or kind of walk around stress so that I'm not as reactive as I used to be.
Very interesting. So going back to what we talked about before, as far as the flattened diurnal curve, lower morning cortisol, higher afternoon, evening cortisol, do you specifically do this towards like afternoon, let's say, like throughout the afternoon and the evening hours rather than the morning, since these things tend to lower cortisol levels?
Absolutely. So yes, absolutely. More in the afternoon is when I'm kind of bringing things down. But I will say, I have, examples like, let's say I have flight anxiety, and I fly a lot. And so there may be a moment where we're taking off and it's really turbulent. And that's usually when my anxiousness kind of clicks in. And that's, even if it's in the morning, it doesn't matter what time of the day, like it can be so intense that I literally feel that adrenaline coursing through me. And I know that I need to shut that response down. And so I usually will have this oil blend with me to kind of calm down that alert response, that panic response. But I will say that, I find, and I don't know if this is for everybody, but I tend to feel a little bit more triggered, a little bit more reactive as the day wears on, probably because I am getting tired. And I find myself using a blend like that. And then I tend to use more awakening, more invigorating blends in the morning.
So what types of, so you mentioned some of the ones that you use in the morning already, wild orange and
Peppermint.
Peppermint.
Yeah.
Okay. I just out of curiosity, are you aware of any research on any oils that actually enhance the cortisol awakening response in the morning that would increase cortisol levels in somebody that has lower cortisol levels?
I would say usually it's your mints, your spearmint, your peppermint. But you know what, Ari, I actually haven't done that research. So I can't speak to that. But if knowing my oils, like knowing those constituents, the reason why I recommend Energizer oils kind of when people are feeling sluggish, when they're feeling fatigued, it's usually going to be citrus oils because of those monoterpene content, the limonene in particular for like wild orange, grapefruit, lemon, and then the menthol in like a peppermint or a spearmint. Those tend to be an awakening oil. And then rosemary. So rosemary has been most researched for, I think about brain fog, but really focus, concentration, alertness. So like my go-to kind of, I call it my get stuff done oil or my awakening blend usually will also involve rosemary as well.
So like peppermint, rosemary, wild orange, any other good ones for like enhancing focus and mental performance?
Absolutely. So my go-to oils for enhancing mental performance are going to be rosemary, basil. So both of them, because very similar families, rosemary, basil, frankincense, peppermint, any mints, so spearmint, peppermint, and then any type of citrus. So tangerine, orange, lemon, lime, any of those are going to have that monoterpene content that I talked about. And so usually it's a combination. Like I have a blend that has a combination of all 5. And I'm working with women who are dealing with thyroid issues or working with women who are just constantly exhausted. That's usually a blend they'll use in the, during the daytime if they find themselves, feeling like a zombie at their computer or just feeling exhausted during the day.
Yeah. Now, one thing I want to mention for people listening to this, I did one podcast with a mutual friend of ours named Eric Zielinski, probably maybe 6 months ago or something like that. And one of the things I talked about in that podcast is the fact that I used to think essential oils were like total new age hippie nonsense. And and that was mostly just a position based out of ignorance, that I had never bothered to actually look at the research and just assumed that they were nonsense. But in fact, there's actually a whole bunch of research on this showing that essential oils have very legitimate effects. There's chemicals that are in very concentrated amounts actually that have very real physiological effects that, as we're getting at here, can enhance physical performance, can lower cortisol levels. One other thing I'm hoping we'll talk about is kind of some female hormone balance stuff. But, I just want to point out for people that maybe hadn't heard that podcast and what I talked about there as far as my story of discovering the science in this area, there is actually a lot of science on this topic. So it's not just new age hippie nonsense or some things that smell nice but don't actually do anything on a physiological level.
Well, I really appreciate you saying that. But Ari, you are such a great researcher. And then, I'm a very good researcher myself. And I initially, when I got introduced to the oils, I also had some of the same reservations, mainly because I hadn't really heard of them before. Nutrition was my area of focus before that. And I was really blown away by the research that I had found. And, when I have my new book coming out, on hormones and oils, we have 40 plus pages of bibliography. Like, oh my, I couldn't believe how the research that was going on in that particular topic. And so it's really fun to get to research this topic. And really, it's great to know that people have an option. They have a different option. And I like when I can provide women and just families in general a more safer, natural alternative to some of the stuff that's at the drugstores or even, at the pharmacy.
Yeah, absolutely. Female hormone balance. What specific essential oils have you found most useful for correcting some of the issues we talked about there as far as estrogen dominance and that sort of thing?
Absolutely. So one of the things I do want to state about oils and hormones is oils are not hormones. So I don't want people to think like, oh, I can just use an oil and it's going to automatically boost my estrogen levels. But then when I think about that as well, I'm not a big proponent of women necessarily taking a bunch of bioidenticals or synthetic hormones. I think that a lot of the things that a lot of our hormone imbalances can be adjusted and remedied with food, with lifestyle, with oils, and with supplementation. So I just wanted to let the record straight there is that, as much as I would love an oil to kind of, I don't even know if I would like necessarily if an oil would go in and just directly increase estrogen levels. But they do still have really profound properties, because I think ultimately we think about food as information. I think about oils as information. Ultimately, your body is the one that's healing. And if you can give your body that good information to make good decisions, then we're on the right track.
Yeah. So.
Okay. So now we can get into the topic.
Yeah. That was a nice preface, but.
Thank you. Yeah. The disclaimer. I just want to lay the groundwork.
Yeah.
So the thing that we were talking about earlier, I don't mean to kind of bring that back, but, so often, when I'm talking about working with cortisol, like I said, these oils that's the one thing I can guarantee that research is the oils can lower cortisol levels. They can lower blood pressure, which is really fascinating to me. And so if you find yourself in a chronic state of stress, a chronic state of deregulated cortisol, you can use oils on a day-to-day basis to really create that balance and also leverage them to make those healthy lifestyle changes. Now, oils can also be used to help support the thyroid. They can be used to help support the gut and the liver. And so, for instance, I think about oils for thyroid support is like frankincense and myrrh and clove. And, there's blends where women can put on. And the thing of it is, I never want people to think, well, oh, if I just use this oil blend, my thyroid is going to be cured. No, there's so much more to thyroid health than just using oils. But we know that oils can help reduce inflammation and that they can help support a healthier thyroid. So that's kind of an example. Another example I love to use is, helping helping to raise progesterone levels because we are supporting those cortisol levels. That's a big one as well. So if we can get cortisol back on track, we begin to then lift the progesterone levels as well. We're not stealing as much of that pregnenolone anymore. And then another one, for boosting metabolism, we've got oils like cinnamon oil that are great for blood sugar regulation and insulin regulation. You've got oils like peppermint that are great for cravings and great for digestive support. And so, usually what I'm looking at for women is how can I aid with sleep support? How can I aid with cravings and metabolism? How can I aid with stress levels or mood support? And then most importantly, how can I aid with things like hot flashes or bloating, a lot of the symptoms that women are dealing with when it comes to hormonal imbalance.
So let's get into some of that stuff. Let's talk about maybe PMS and menopause symptoms and hot flashes. What are some strategies that you found, or some oils that you found to be especially effective there?
Absolutely. So, it's interesting. I was just working with a woman the other day who woke up in the middle of the night with the worst menstrual cramps, like so much pain that it woke her up, in the middle of the night. And, that go-to oil for helping to reduce menstrual cramps, mainly because it helps to calm spasmodic, soft tissue muscle, especially uterine contractions, is going to be clary sage. And so I have a blend that it's called my Hormone Synergy blend, my Superwoman blend, that addresses things like PMS and addresses things like menstrual cramps, hot flashes. And that blend, the majority of it is going to be clary sage, because that tends to be the magic maker, that the chemical constituents in that oil, the linalool acetate in that, and trying to think about the other major constituent for that particular oil, helps to calm smooth muscle, helps to support estrogen, and helps to stop things like hot flashes and mood swings. So my Superwoman blend is 12 drops in a 10 ml roller like this, 12 drops of clary sage, 10 drops of lavender, 5 drops of cedarwood, 5 drops of geranium, and 4 drops of ylang-ylang. And then you just top it off with whatever carrier oil. And then you're literally rolling it over the ovaries, which is about 3 inches below the belly button. Or it can be on the bottom of the feet. It can be on the wrist or inside the arm, because again, oils are lipophilic, and they're systemic. So once they get into the system, they're going to go to work. Now, I do believe in path of least resistance. So if you're having menstrual cramps, maybe not put them on your knee or on your neck, put them right on the area of concern. But that is one of the oils that I really love for women, is going to be clary sage. It tends to be a really big, the kind of a magic maker for women when it comes to hormonal PMS in particular.
And that's having some direct effects on estrogen and progesterone, right?
It is. It is having some effects on those hormones as well. More so, it's kind of a progesterone booster more than it is a estrogen booster, in the research that I've seen, and it's phenomenal for women in perimenopause and menopause. So it really helps to support those menopausal symptoms like hot flashes, mood swings, irritability, even heavy flow, like heavy periods that can be happening during perimenopause.
Very interesting. Mm-hmm. So actually, one other point I want to kind of quickly digress on is mm-hmm. there are some people who say that it's okay to apply essential oils directly to the skin, and other people who object to that. What's your take on that?
Great question. So to dilute or not to dilute? Yeah. That is the question. So there are a lot of benefits to diluting. So it really, honestly, there's no reason to not dilute. Remember that essential oils, and I hadn't talked to you about this or in this podcast, but essential oils are volatile aromatic constituents, which means they go from liquid to gas state once they're in room temperature. So for instance, if you had walked into my house and I had just opened a bottle of wild orange, the second that you walked in, that aroma is going to just immerse itself in the environment, and you're going to smell it even if I'm across the room several hundred feet away. That it's going to just be pervasive inside of the house, and you're going to smell it. It's going to elicit an experience for you, and maybe even an emotion for you. And so that volatility of those oils means that when you put a neat oil on your arm or on your hand or wherever you're putting it, it's evaporating as you're using it. And so in order to really get the full benefit of that oil, diluting it is such a key piece, because it allows the oil to stay on the skin and not evaporate as quickly. So you're getting more effectiveness that way. Also, you're able to cover a bigger surface area. So if you are dealing with low back pain or neck pain, or you're dealing with stomach cramps or gas and bloating, you can cover a bigger surface area. But then also the big thing about oils is that they are very, very powerful, and a little goes a long way. And very, very rarely do you find that someone needs full strength of anything. And why waste it if you don't have to? So those are really the big reasons for diluting. Now, with that high concentration with some of these oils, they can be very warming, they can be very cooling, literally to the touch, and very irritating. So you want to be really mindful of that. So like for instance, oregano oil, if you look at the research, oregano oil helps to get rid of warts and toe fungus. And Ari, I can't tell you how many before and after photos I have received with oregano oil over the years. But again, it's a really hot oil. So you have to be mindful when it comes to using it. So I always say, always dilute. Are there some oils you can use neat? Yes, there are definitely some of them that are safe. You want to make sure you're using a very high quality oil, but for the most part, it makes sense to use them in a dilution.
Yeah, gotcha. So at least two, maybe three other contexts I want to talk about. One is energy. Obviously,
Yes.
a lot of people listening to this podcast, The Energy Blueprint, are interested in enhancing their energy levels. I know we kind of indirectly got at some of that with the brain enhancing, cognitive enhancing stuff, which kind of overlaps with energy enhancement with rosemary and peppermint and wild orange and a few of the others you mentioned. But are there specifically any substances that you found to be especially effective for kind of maybe giving an afternoon energy boost if somebody's taking a dip and starting to feel tired?
Absolutely. I have more women come to me because they just want more energy. How often do women ask that of you, Ari? I
Yeah.
can't even imagine. A lot. And so, my mama, that was her thing. I was asking my mom, how are you doing? I just need more energy, Mariza. And so oils, that was one of the first things I discovered. It was like, well, can I use these oils to get a little bit more energy out of my day?
And by the way, just I can't resist commenting, but as we were having dinner a couple weeks ago with friends, your mom texted you that she had just completed a marathon. So whatever the intervention is that you're about to tell us you did with your mom is obviously effective. If she went from I need more energy to I just ran a marathon.
And it was first place. She got first place in that one.
Nice.
So proud of her.
Yeah.
So growing up, my mama always wanted more energy. And, that was the one thing. She's like, well, now you're a doctor. You got to figure out a way to get me more energy. And man, she took to oils and took to a lot of my recommendations, like fish to water. Because when you're that desperate for more energy or whatever it is that you're looking for, you're willing, at that point, you're willing to try whatever it took. And it was using oils for energy that got my mom hooked, line, and sinker. And she travels. She runs with her oils. You can get these little teeny vials. You can put your oils in. You can just tap them out. And so she always has her energy oils with her wherever she goes. But we did talk about a couple of those oils before, and I've written some really fun articles for magazines and publications around oils for energy. And really, it's those citruses are such a big player. Monoterpenes, especially when it comes to the brain, have an ability to activate those good feeling serotonin, dopamine neurotransmitters. So monoterpenes are amazing and they're very, very adaptive. When I think about essential oils, I think about the one essential oil that's very adaptogenic. It's going to be citruses. So anything that's got a high monoterpene content, but most specifically 85 to 95% limonene is what we're looking for, that really help to give you that extra burst of energy. And that's why I love to pair those monoterpenes with those oils, those citrus oils, with like a mint, like a menthol, because menthol not only kind of opens up airways, so bringing more oxygen to the brain, it really just kind of alivens the senses, alivens the sinuses, and you just feel more alert, more awake. And so, when I have people doing long road trips or long nights at the office, usually I tell people to always have peppermint with them, to just be sniffing peppermint oil, into, depending on what it is. A lot of people I've worked with, are working on the road really late at night, and instead of reaching for a Red Bull or a caffeine, some type of caffeine beverage, it's usually peppermint and some type of citrus oil. So those would be the two oils based on the chemical constituents that really help to give you that extra energy boost.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Two other contexts. Weight loss, and I know that you've kind of addressed this already, but maybe addressed it a little bit at least. But are there any specific oils that you found to be especially effective for weight loss?
Yes, so there are some oils that are good for weight loss, and also great oils for cravings. I always think about cravings as being this unmet need. Usually it's not the thing that you're trying to reach for, right? That Kind bar, that See's candy, those kettle chips, whatever your flavor is that you're reaching for. Usually it's you're tired or you're stressed or you're feeling emotionally drained, whatever that may be. So just being really mindful about what that craving is. Like, what is your body really craving? What is it really looking for? But then using oils to kind of help, depending, there are oils specifically for, I don't necessarily recommend using oils as an appetite suppressant, but if indeed you're about to make a decision to eat a Twinkie or a donut because you're tired and you need sugar, you could use oils for boosting energy instead. But if you're looking for an appetite suppressant or a craving oil, peppermint's going to come up over and over and over again. And Ari, it's literally my favorite oil because it has so many benefits. But peppermint is a really powerful really powerful craving reducer, but also it's an appetite suppressant. There was a really great article that came out. Dr. Hirsch had discovered that peppermint oil can actually suppress appetite, specifically around cravings in the middle of the afternoon. So peppermint oil is going to be a great oil. Also, cinnamon. Cinnamon's great for blood sugar regulation. Grapefruit is wonderful for lymphatic, but also supporting liver and digestive health. It's also a powerful detoxifier. And then ginger oil. So ginger is not only phenomenal for gut health and helping to ensure that you are actually getting the fuel that you consume, but it's also a metabolizer. It actually it warms up the body. So ginger and cinnamon are very warming oils, and they tend to kind of rev up the metabolism a little bit. So those would be my go-to oils. But there isn't necessarily an oil that's like the magic bullet weight loss oil. I just oftentimes think, well, why are we overeating? What's going on? Why are we making these choices? Clearly, it's not because we're fueling the body. Oftentimes, it's for a different need altogether.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think you can kind of attack it from multiple angles there by addressing appetite control and kind of suppressing cravings for junk food, at the same time supporting energy levels, and you're affecting the inputs that are controlling body weight regulation through a number of different angles that way. And then you also mentioned, for example, suppressing cortisol levels in the evening when they're elevated, which is a factor promoting insulin resistance, and decreasing chronic inflammation, which is going to affect thyroid hormone levels. And, you're addressing so many different angles all at the same time, which is great.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's really interesting, the use of these, and not that they don't have their own powerful chemical constituents, but I feel like we have to take a little bit of responsibility around the types of behaviors we're creating, and those late night snacks because we think we need to stay up later. Instead, if indeed you had to stay up later for whatever reason, I always have peppermint. There are right now in our home, we probably have about 8 opened peppermint bottles. Gosh forbid there not be one in every room of the house because we use it so much for so many reasons. But it's the thing I reach for if any craving comes out, and I always know it's not because I'm hungry. It's always something else. But any craving comes around, it's peppermint. I need a little bit of a boost, it's peppermint. Like I'm hardwired to reach for that before I reach for anything else.
Yeah. And thank you for mentioning also the fact that this is within a context of hopefully, nutrition and lifestyle support and interventions as well. One thing I want to comment on that I've experienced a lot is I've seen a lot of people, especially women, who get hormones tested, who get a blood test or saliva test, and then they say, my hormones are this, this, and this. What should I do to affect my hormones? And they don't make the connection that hormones are a product of nutrition and lifestyle. They think like, okay, there's nutrition and lifestyle, and those affect me in certain ways, make me healthy, but they don't understand that nutrition and lifestyle are directly affecting a lot of these different hormones, whether cortisol, whether estrogen, whether progesterone. These things are in a constant dynamic interplay with nutrition and lifestyle. And so it's like, yeah, okay, my hormones are off, so forget your nutrition and lifestyle stuff. I want something that's going to fix my hormones. Do you know what I mean? Like people just don't see the connection between those two things really well.
They don't realize it's that explanation is your hormones are literally chemical messengers that are running around like little UPS man delivering packages everywhere, with the information you're giving it. They are literally in response to what you're creating. And I think when people begin to realize that, and I always give that analogy, I'm like, do you want the UPS man to deliver the wrong package to the house? I said, because you're creating a situation where that's going to happen.
Yeah.
over and over and over again. Yeah, we villainize these hormones. We villainize these chemical messengers that are literally just trying to receive messages and do our bidding based on our lifestyle choices. And it's, it's always kind of just, again, taking that deep, long look in the mirror and seeing what kind of life do I want to live. One of the things that Tony Robbins said when I was at an event a couple years ago is that your life is measured by how you feel, by your emotions. And I remember thinking to myself, like, man, I feel stressed a lot. And my life is measured by how I feel. My life was being measured by my stress. And that was a major kind of, talk about Mack truck moment. And I was like, I don't want to live like this anymore. I am cultivating these behaviors, and something has got to shift.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And thank you for clarifying that point, because obviously you're trying to give people like some easy, simple solutions to a lot of these problems. Like, here, use this, helps with this, and this helps with this. But we don't want to give the message, and I know that you don't want to give the message that like, this is the entire solution, is just to buy, 12 essential oils and then you're completely fixed. You can forget about your diet and lifestyle because all you need is essential oils, right? So, I thank you for clarifying that, and that was beautifully said. One more context that I would love for you to talk about essential oil tips with is sleep. And I know you kind of mentioned this when you covered your nightly ritual. And I believe you mentioned, let me see if I remember, chamomile, lavender, and bergamot.
Mm-hmm.
But are there any others that you found that are especially effective in kind of helping the brain shift into sleep mode?
Absolutely.
Shutting down the sympathetic nervous system?
Absolutely. So there's some major players that I did not mention. So I apologize, but I'm going to get to mention them now.
Yeah, you should be ashamed of yourself.
Yeah, my goodness. So the big player, the big player, it's so often, when I think about these oils, I think about bridging the gap towards creating those habits that you really, really want. Oils just kind of ease us into this with a little bit more grace and ease. That's how I think about it. And when I think about, going to sleep, sometimes we need a little help to turn off that mental chatter. Sometimes we need a little bit of a help to get into a routine. And I think that's where oils really show up. And I've had the blessing to work with a lot of women and men together dealing with sleep issues, because my goodness, it is so prevalent here in our society. And so if I had a name like the two oils, the hook, line, and sinker oils, it's going to be vetiver. Now, vetiver is a very powerful neurological tonic. Lots of incredible research with vetiver, and it's really considered a natural sedative. It's a root, and vetiver is grown most in Haiti. And it smells like it smells like peanut butter. It's really rich, it's very viscous. And so vetiver and lavender, that's kind of we call the liquid ambium of the sleep essential oil world. And it's really, you can diffuse it. You can make a roller bottle out of lavender and vetiver. Another one, these wood oils are really profound. So vetiver, myrrh, sandalwood, frankincense, all of these very calming, very grounding, very sedative, all have these chemical constituents called sequiterpenes. And sequiterpenes are neurocalming. They have a way of just shutting down the brain. And it's so funny. I was diffusing vetiver and lavender. Usually the diffuser is a little bit away from the bed, but one of the nights a couple of weeks ago, I was diffusing vetiver and lavender, and I think I had Roman chamomile in there as well. So I like to do it in threes. I like to do threes. You can only do two, but I like threes. So I was diffusing that by the bed by Alex, and Alex was in the middle of talking to me about something, and all of a sudden, like his voice was like slurish. He was falling asleep as he was talking to me. I literally drugged my husband before going to bed.
Nice. Do you have any truth serum essential oils that can substitute for like giving somebody an injection so that they can tell you the truth and can't help themselves?
I don't know those yet, but I do know the big sedative oils. And so vetiver is a big one. And when I work with patients, because there's blends, that they can try, they get, and if they aren't doing the trick, I'm like, okay, we need to bring in the big guns, and that's vetiver. And so often it really does have a way of just calming the brain, and it's one of the highest sequiterpene content you can get your hands on that really tends to do the trick.
Mm-hmm. One other, I'm just curious, have you looked into copaiba essential oil at all?
Ooh, yes, I have. Yes.
Tell me about copaiba.
Yeah. So how I think about copaiba It has a lot of benefits. You know, it's an endocannabinoid. It connects with the CB2 receptors when it comes, like you think about seaweed oil or you think about THC. And copaiba is it's separate. It acts on a different because those are acting on CB1 receptors. These are acting on CB2, and so it more connects with the endocrine system, but has a really profound effect on the neurological system. And it was interesting. I was interviewing a woman today who is a stress researcher, and she talks about how when you're feeling stress, it's almost like a rolling boil, and the use of copaiba can take a rolling boil and take it back down to a simmer. That's how she describes that ability. So copaiba, kind of very similar to a vetiver or a cedarwood or a frankincense, has really powerful calming and sedative properties. But most of where people are using copaiba is really pain and more neurological pain. So we're seeing people using it for neurospasticity, or they have hyperspasticity, where their muscles are overly firing. We're seeing really great benefits with that. And you know, I will preface the fact that I need to do more and more research with this oil. But what I do know about it is that it's really phenomenal for the neurological system, specifically around those C fibers, our pain fibers. And it is great for stress. It's great for anxiousness. And it's also, we're learning that it's great for cardiovascular health. And so it depends on what the reason why they're using it. Some people use it for sleep. Some people use it for anxiety, and some people use it for pain, specifically neurological pain.
Very nice summary. There was one other context that I wanted to ask you about.
And you feel it, Ari. Like you use that oil, and it shifts something. You know, we have it at home. It's not too far from this where I'm sitting. And anytime I use that oil, man, it is, I feel like you kind of need to buckle in. You be really intentional with an oil like that, you know, be really clear about why you're using it, because you will feel a shift. So I just wanted to just give that information as well.
Buckle up and get ready for a hallucinogenic trip. No, not quite. But no, I use it as well, and I do really like it, and I definitely notice a calming effect from it.
Yeah.
But just to be clear for anybody who doesn't understand my humor there, it is very far from hallucinogenic, so you have no concerns with that.
Yeah, it's not like mushrooms. No, it's just a very calming oil. Oh goodness, now no one's going to use it.
So we've talked a lot about a lot of different oils here. One thing that I want to ask you is, are there any concerns, like with, I mean, obviously these are very concentrated chemicals. These are not, you know, just, these aren't like homeopathic substances that you could take huge doses of and kind of not even notice any effect. These are very, very concentrated chemicals. And, you know, with active compounds that are pharmacologically active in the human body. Is there any concern about taking too much, or using like too many different oils or anything like that? Are you aware of any kind of potential side effects of getting a little carried away with essential oils?
Yes, I can speak to that. And, you know, this is from a girl. When I first got started with oils, I had no idea. I was just putting them on, playing with them. And, you know, even for as powerful as they are, they can still be pretty safe. However, you do want to be mindful. Anytime we're taking something like, you know, as powerful as essential oils, you want to be mindful. So yes, you know, at the end of the day, your liver is having to process this, your kidneys are having to process this, like they're processing everything else. We don't want to overload the system. On average, I would say about, you know, a very safe place to play is about 15 drops of oil a day. And when you're diluting these oils, you really aren't getting 15 drops a day. You got to really work hard to get 15 drops of essential oils into your system every single day. In terms of using, you know, a ton of them, you know, I have blends with 5 oils in them, and, you know, I'll use a blend with 5 oils, and then the oils are being diffused in the environment around me. And so I haven't really noticed a lot around, you know, I don't think one should use 20 oils at the exact same time, but I think that, you know, on average usage, you're using a blend for sleep, or maybe you're using a blend earlier in the day for alertness, that you're really pretty safe. But just making sure that you're diluting all of your oils. I typically like to operate around a 10% to 25% dilution. I feel like that really works for me and a lot of the people that I've, like the tens of thousands of people that I've used. When it comes to children, you're looking at an even lower concentration than that, anywhere between 1 to 5%. And then for more acute issues, maybe even up to 10%. And so, I do a really good job in my Smart Mom's Guide to Essential Oil book to really break down dilutions. And I'm very conservative in that book because I don't know what kind of oils people are using. I don't know the purity of those oils. So I always want to be really mindful of that. But as long as you're not dousing yourself with oils every hour, on the hour, tons of them, I really feel like you're in a pretty good place.
Gotcha. A couple more quick things on oils. One is how to use them. And I know you've covered this a bit already, like as far as using the roller, that seems to be your preferred method. So
I love me some rollers. They're so easy.
So, and that's, you're getting it like basically in two different mechanisms. You're absorbing some through the skin and you're inhaling some. Is that accurate?
That is correct. Yeah. So the roller, I think anytime you're using topical, the cool thing about topical usage is that you really can be targeted to the area of concern. So yeah, if I am feeling a little bit bloated, or I wake up in the middle of the night with menstrual cramps, I can apply it right to that area of concern, and kind of target that issue. Or maybe I wake up with a kink in my neck and I need some support in the back of my neck for that. So you can kind of use them in that way. But the fastest and most effective way to use essential oils is going to be aromatic, because again, not only are the oils going to the brain, to the limbic system, to that olfactory nerve, but you're also breathing them in. And through, these are very, very tiny molecules. And so they go into the lungs, they go through the alveoli, and they hit the bloodstream. So the fastest way you can get these oils into the system is by breathing them in. And it's also the easiest way to use them. It's the most effective way to use them. Topical, I think for a lot of people, as a practitioner, I know a lot of people are looking for a very targeted, specific problem. They're having respiratory issues, they're having sinus issues, they're having digestive problems. And when you can apply an oil to that area, there's something to be said about touch being so healing. So being able to apply those oils or have someone apply an oil on you, it's a very healing experience. So you're getting both the benefits of that targeted, area of concern, and then the aromatic benefit as well. And then the more controversial consideration is internal. I don't typically recommend internal usage. People use the copaiba internally. It has to be a very specific reason for a very targeted purpose. The oil has to be a very specific grade. There's a lot of things that have to line up for internal usage to make sense, and it's not really necessary when you have the other two options.
Gotcha. On that note, you mentioned very briefly there, it has to be a very specific grade. I know there's a lot of talk and controversy among essential oils experts when it comes to specific brands and like fake essential oils, or essential oils that are not very good quality and are diluted and things of that nature. I know everybody has their favorite brands they like to talk about, but can you talk about, to what extent is this really a problem that, an essential oils that someone might get at their local health food store might not be that great a quality?
Absolutely. So, it is actually a bit of a concern in the essential oil world. About 85% of oils on the market are for synthetic, for perfume purposes. You go to your local drugstore, you're going to find lavender lotions and even gum and flavorings, even Coca-Cola, for example. What makes Coca-Cola the flavoring of Coca-Cola is essential oils. And it has to be, I can't even imagine. I haven't had a Coca-Cola in probably almost 20 years. Oh my gosh. But I'm guessing for those who drink Coca-Cola that they don't want it to taste different. They don't want one batch of Coke to be different than another batch of Coca-Cola. So a lot of the essential oils in the world are actually used for pharmaceutical properties, or they're used for fragrances, or they're used for food grade. When it comes to an oil specifically tailored for a therapeutic purpose, there's a lot more standards that have to come into play. So just be mindful of that there's that whole world of oils there. So you're looking, when it comes to looking for a good oil, you're looking for a couple of things. You're looking for me, we live in the world of information. You can Google pretty much everything and anything. So if you're about to buy an oil from a company, I would just go onto the website and take a look. Do they tell you where they're sourcing their oils? Do they disclose where these oils are coming from? Because Ari, you and I both know when it comes to food or when it comes to any kind of plant, where our plants are sourced is really important. Are they even sourced in their original habitat? That's going to be important as well. And then what happens after this oil is sourced? What kind of testing are they doing on these oils? Are they antimicrobial? Are they free of any types of any types of fillers and additives? What kind of testing do they use? Do they use gas chromatography or gas spectroscopy? Are they testing for chirality? There's a lot of different ways to look at oils and making sure that they're pure. So I would just really, what I'm looking for, tell me where you're getting them, tell me where these oils are coming from, and then 2, are you testing them at all? And a company that's doing that will share with you that they're doing it, just kind of like organic. A farm will tell you if they're organic, just as an example, because why wouldn't they? So a company will tell you the type of practices they have around their oils, just like a farm for vegetables will.
Okay. And if somebody doesn't want to spend all of those hours to do all of that investigation of all those companies, do you have a quick breakdown?
I do.
Either that you want to provide here or that someone can get from you on your site or something like that.
I'll share it right now. I'm just pulling all my little things up real quick. So judging an oil by its label. So one of the things you're looking for is you want to make sure that the oil bottle is amber, that it has an orifice reducer on it, that it's not a dropper, or it's just the oil can just spill out, because an orifice reducer helps it from oxidizing, helps it from getting preventing contamination. But amber, because oils again are volatile and they can be contaminated through light as well. You're also looking on that amber bottle that there's a scientific name of the plant that's clearly labeled on the bottle. And if it's diluted, it should say it's diluted. It needs to disclose everything inside of that bottle. So if they did use fractionated coconut oil, it better say they use fractionated coconut oil. They should also, the price is a big thing as well. If you are looking at all of your oils on the shelf and frankincense is priced the same as lemon, best believe they are cheating in some way. There's adulteration there. There's no way that you have a cold pressed lemon oil the same price as the thing about harvesting a frankincense oil, people die harvesting that oil. The labor intensity around harvesting that oil in Somalia in 130-degree weather on a mountain, a jagged cliff mountain, they're far beyond such a different way of getting these 2 oils processed. So there's no way they can be priced the same. So if you're seeing that all the prices are the same on the shelf, then that's a red flag to tell you that something's not right with those oils. And then last but not least is expiration. They need to have an expiration date on them. And they need to tell you how to use them. They need to have the ATI label on there. And if they are internally consumable, they need to have a supplement label on them as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
So do you have like top 2-3 brands that you can suggest? And if you don't want to name them here, you can direct people.
Head over my website.
Yeah.
You can head over to my website. So my top brand. So I like Plant Therapy. I think they do a good job. They do disclose a lot of where they get their oils and their purification practices. I am a big fan of doTERRA. I also feel like they do a good job of disclosing where they get their oils and their purification practices. Those would be my 2. And then Mountain Rose Oils, I feel like they do a pretty good job at that as well.
Nice. Cool. So to wrap up, and this has been excellent. This has been like very practical, content packed, unusually practical, where like almost every question that I've asked you is like, and what are the practical solutions for this? And what are the practical solutions for this?
I like practical and I like easy, because I feel like that's our life. Yeah. And, I love the science as well, but I feel like so often, people are like, well, what do I do? How do I do it? So I hope that was helpful. Yeah,
it was great. So to wrap up, I would love, actually, I was going to say your top 3 things that you want to leave people with, but actually I would like top 4, because I want one of them to be matcha. This is just my personal request, because obviously when we met for the first time and we hung out for lunch, I was telling you how I just got into matcha, and I was like starting to kind of love matcha tea a lot, and you're like, oh, I wrote a book on matcha. And I realize right now that we're at the end of this interview. We haven't even talked about matcha at all. So I want you to give your top 4 tips, but my request is that one of them needs to be matcha.
Okay, perfect. I can do that for you. So top 4 tips. First tip, when it comes to supporting your hormones and really just kind of getting your body back on track, I think it's super important to have that morning and evening ritual, time that is for yourself, that is geared towards that self-care. And definitely top 2 is put oils to work for you. Have those instant wins where you go in and you feel like you're equipped with the right tools to make those practical decisions and those changes, and that you've experienced quick wins. So often in this healing journey, it can feel overwhelming and it can feel like you're not always winning. And that's what I think I love the oils so much about, is that there are definitely days where I need that win, and they really come and they give me that instant win. So that's going to be number 2. Number 3, just get it big clarity on that self-awareness. Ask yourself those important questions. What is serving me? How can I love my body more? What's going to really allow me to have my best day ever? Asking yourself more questions and becoming in tune with your body is such a critical piece to living the best life. And then number 4, having, again, a part of that morning ritual, having wonderful things that you can rely on, like matcha green tea. Matcha is a powerful antioxidant. It's 10 times more powerful than the average green tea. It has L-theanine, which is really wonderful for helping to kind of give you that focus throughout the day without jitters or excess, that weird, funky energy. So there's so many wonderful benefits for matcha, from immune system to metabolism to, again, keeping you focused at the task at hand. So matcha always makes the list. I drink matcha every single day. And those would be my top 4 things. I know those are a little bit out of order, but those are the things I'd have you focus on.
Yeah, get it right next time. Jeez. No, that was beautiful, Mariza. Thank you so much. It was really such a pleasure having you on. Thank you for going a little overtime with me. I appreciate the extra love, and such a pleasure hanging out with you and chatting as always. And thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day. Also, where should people go to get more from you? I know you just wrote a book, The Smart Mom's Guide to Essential Oils. That's your latest book. But where would you like people to go? Do you want to direct them to Amazon? Do you want to direct them to your site?
I want to direct them to my podcast. That is where you really get to know me, get to experience amazing individuals like yourself. I can't wait for our interview.
Yeah, me too.
So the Essential You podcast, you can find it anywhere: Stitcher, iTunes, wherever you love to listen to podcasts, wherever you're listening to Ari's podcast right now, that's where you can go. And then if you wanted to check out the book, they are on Amazon. All the books are there. So, but thank you, Ari. Thank you for letting me share where you can find me.
Yeah, thank you so much, and for sharing your wisdom with my audience. It was such a pleasure having you on, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much.
Hey there, this is Ari again. One more quick thing before you go. Just make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Energy Blueprint, and also make sure to subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform, whether that's iTunes or Stitcher or anything else. I hope you guys enjoyed this interview, and I will see you again next week.